When blood taints the sacred Idemili River and plunges 13 villages into terror, only one warrior dares to break the curse. Ojadili, the man who craves battles so fierce that even the gods tremble. Armed with courage, a cowardly flute player whose music awakens hidden power, and a destiny written in scars, Ojadili crosses forbidden realms to wrestle immortals, knowing victory could remake him forever, and failure will doom every soul he loves. Hello friends, enjoy this relaxing moment with Valentino's stories. Remember to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments section, and generously hit the like button because it means a lot to us. Please relax and enjoy as we dive in the story. The Idemili River wound through thick forest like a silver snake. Every child in the 13 villages knew the warning, do not eat river food before blessing, and never let blood touch the current. Respect kept the water sweet and the farms green. One dusty harmattan afternoon a stranger stumbled from the western path. His wrapper was torn, sandals were strings, and mud caked his hair. He collapsed beside the river. A palm wine tapper, Okeke, and an old woman, Mama Obi, rolled him over, gave him a sip of water, and asked his name. He whispered that soldiers had burned his distant town. He had run for days, hiding in bushes and drinking puddles. Okeke pointed to the cool river. Drink, he offered. The stranger crawled, cupped water, and swallowed greedily. His eyes fell on a tilapia flapping in a shallow pool. Before anyone could speak, he split the fish with a stone and bit the bleeding flesh. Red drops spattered Idemili. A sudden wind bent the reeds. Birds scattered. Okeke shouted, "Stop!" But the taboo was broken. That night elders met under the irako tree. Firelight danced as the chief priest, Ens Enyanmu, said, "Blood has entered the river. The goddess will answer." They locked the stranger in an empty hut and warned him to stay away from the water. At dawn mist covered the land. 2 chiefs paddled out to check traps. Their canoe was later found drifting upside down. No bodies surfaced. Wailing rose. Chiefs lost without burial meant restless spirits. 7 days passed. On the 8th morning maidens went to fetch water. As the first pot touched the river, the clear water turned red as palm oil. A bitter smell rose. The girls screamed and fled. Babies cried as if they knew. Fear spread like bush fire. Farmers dropped hoes. Traders deserted stalls. Lines formed on the road to a distant province where strangers, for a fee, allowed them to draw water. Mothers worried over cooking, healers over medicine. The poorest feared thirst would take their infants. Wise women taught children to spread plantain leaves at dawn to collect dew. Even a teaspoonful felt like treasure. In the guard hut the stranger heard the cries and guilt twisted his stomach. Children whispered, calling him Ani Ojo, bringer of evil. The chief's widows carried kola nuts and white fowl to the shrine. Kneeling, they begged for mercy. After casting shells, Ens Enyanmu said, "Until Idemili is cleansed and the offender forgiven, red water will flow and more deaths may follow." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Who would face an angry goddess? Debate raged. Some elders cried, "Drive him away." Others feared the curse would shadow his steps. They chose to consult Ndi Ichi, the ancestral spirits, through a midnight ritual. Drums throbbed while the oldest women sang laments, seeking wisdom. Sparks from the sacred fire floated into the sky like desperate prayers. Hardship tightened its grip. Cooking fires burned low, soup stretched with bitter leaves. Children drew pretend streams in dust, singing the river's old songs in cracked voices. Rumors spread that the drowned chiefs walked the shore at night, voices like wind through bamboo. Merchants who crossed the boundary carried the tale to far markets, and travelers began avoiding the roads that led to the Red River. At last messengers gathered palm oil, chalk, white goats, and kola. The elders would climb the oracle hills to learn the price of forgiveness. Until then the river, once a blessing, lay under a blood-red curse, and every soul waited in silence for what Idemili might claim next. The red water of Idemili still frightened everyone. Pots that once rang with laughter now sat empty in kitchens. Every morning the women tied cloth over their heads, formed a long line, and trudged to a neighboring territory called Umuno. The road wound through thorn bushes and stony hills. Children cried from thirst, goats bleated when their owners stopped to rest aching feet. At first, the people of Umuno welcomed their thirsty guests, letting them fill gourds and buckets without complaint. But after a week the riverbank grew crowded. The grass near the water turned muddy under many footprints. Young men from Umuno began to watch the visiting maidens too closely. They whistled, tugged at bracelets, and bragged about their own strength. Each day the jokes grew ruder. One afternoon, Nkem, a tall maiden from Idemali's eastern coast, bent to scoop water when a stranger's hand brushed her arm. She jerked away, eyes wide. 3 other girls hurried over, shielding her with their bodies. Angry words flew. "Leave her alone," one of them shouted. The Umuno youths laughed, calling the visitors weak and desperate. The scene ended when older women on both sides pushed the quarrelers apart. Yet the seed of anger had already been planted. That night, back in their own village square, the elders of the 13 villages sat in a half-circle. Firelight made their gray beards glow. Chief Obifuna struck the ground with his staff. "Our daughters are insulted," he said. "Shall we continue to bow because we need water?" Another elder, Maman Jadika, shook her head. "Water is life, but dignity is life too." Matters grew worse the following day when a tax collector from Umuno arrived. He carried a rolled-up goatskin scroll sealed with red wax. Standing before the gathering crowd, he cleared his throat and read, "By order of His Royal Highness, King O'Duns of Umuno, any person from outside our borders who draws water from our river must pay a daily tribute of 10 cowries." Gasps rose. 10 cowries was steep. Some families earned that much in an entire market week. Mothers whispered in fear. Farmers clenched their jaws. The collector announced the tax would begin at dawn, bowed stiffly, and marched away. Tempers flared during the meeting that evening. Younger warriors wanted to march into Umuno and seize the river by force. Older voices warned that war would only spill more blood and anger the gods further. After hours of debate, the council's oldest man, Papa Okizi, lifted a trembling hand. "Let the gods decide," he said. "We will challenge them to a lawful contest." Everyone fell silent. A wrestling match, Mba, was sacred. Winners earned not just praise but a verdict from the spirits. If the eastern villages won, they would drink freely. If they lost, they would pay the tax and live with the shame. A messenger carried the challenge to Umuno. Their elders agreed. The fight would take place on neutral ground, a large clearing between both lands. Each side would field its best. Back home, eyes turned to one man, Ojadili. He was tall as a palm tree, shoulders broad, scars from past victories crisscrossing his back. Children followed him in the evening, pretending to wrestle in his long shadow. Yet he was humble, greeting even the smallest child with a nod. When the council asked him to defend their honor, he placed a hand over his heart. "I will fight," he said simply. The day of reckoning arrived beneath a searing sun. Villagers from both sides gathered early, carrying drums, gongs, and sticks to beat rhythms of encouragement. Cloth canopies flapped in hot wind. Women arranged calabashes of palm wine and roasted yams for the long wait. 4 of Umuno's strongest men stepped forward together. They were huge, arms thick like tree trunks, eyes burning with confidence. The crowd murmured. Never had anyone faced 4 opponents at once. But the rules were clear. Idemali's side had chosen only one champion, so he must defeat all challengers or yield. Ojadili entered the ring marked by white chalk lines. He wore a short wrapper tied tight at his waist and rubbed red earth on his chest. He closed his eyes, whispering a quick prayer to his ancestors. Drums pounded low, then faster. At the chief referee's signal, the first opponent charged. His tackle felt like a rushing bull, but Ojadili pivoted, hooked a leg, and flung the man onto his back in one smooth motion. Cheers exploded from the eastern crowd. A second fighter leaped in while Ojadili still crouched. This man used raw power, locking arms around Ojadili's waist. Dust billowed as they rolled. Ojadili's muscles strained, veins showed on his neck. He braced his feet, lifted, and twisted. With a thud the giant landed outside the chalk line, defeated. The third attacker circled warily, seeking weakness. He aimed quick kicks at Ojadili's knees. Ojadili absorbed a blow, feigned retreat, then lunged, grasping the man's ankle. One loud sweep, and the challenger fell face down. The referee clapped above his head. Another point won. Only the fourth and strongest remained. Sweat dripped from both warriors. The sun blazed overhead, turning the clearing into a clay oven. Spectators held their breath. The last man roared and rushed with furious speed, wrapping massive arms around Ojadili's chest. The two men locked in a test of wills. Feet dug grooves into the soil. Dust rose in clouds. For a moment Ojadili's back bent dangerously. A hush spread. Then he remembered the thirsty faces of his people, the insulted maidens, and the empty pots at home. A surge of resolve coursed through him. He shifted weight, slipped a shoulder under his opponent's arm, and heaved. The giant's feet left the ground. Time slowed. Both bodies twisted in midair. With a mighty crash, the Umuno warrior hit the earth flat on his back, dust bursting like a drumbeat. Silence reigned for one heartbeat, then wild jubilation followed. Shouts, ululations, drums, rattles. Women danced. Men lifted staffs in the air. Ojadili helped the fallen man stand, showing respect. Even some spectators from Umuno clapped at such skill. The referee raised Ojadili's hand high. At that instant, clouds drifted across the sun, and a cool breeze swept over the clearing. Far away, the Idemili River shimmered as if a veil lifted. Old women drawing water later swore they saw the surface sparkle clear again, no trace of red. Word spread fast. Idemili had forgiven them. The goddess, pleased by fair contest and Ojadili's courage, withdrew her wrath. By dusk, children ran to the familiar bank, cupped hands, and drank their own water for the first time in weeks. Laughter echoed through the valleys. That evening the elders of both lands met once more. Umuno's chief poured palm wine for Ojadili. "Your strength is mighty, but your honor is greater," he said. Taxes were dropped, and a pact of friendship sealed with kola nut. Back in his village, torches lit every doorway. Songs praising Ojadili rose with the stars. Mothers told their children, "Remember this day. One heart can lift a curse when guided by justice and bravery." And though muscles ached and sweat still cooled on his skin, Ojadili simply bowed his head, thankful that the river once again flowed pure, and that peace, not pride, had won the day. Evening drums echoed through the valleys as laughter filled the air. Children gathered in circles, clapping rhythms while chanting, "Ojadili! Ojadili!" Their small voices rose like birds at sunrise. At the village square, maidens in bright wrappers danced under a fat moon, their anklets shaking like tiny bells. They sang a new song, one they had composed just to praise the hero who made water flow again. Every verse told of Ojadili's strength. Every chorus promised his name would live longer than palm trees. Goats nibbled quietly near the fires, and even restless dogs lay at ease. Hunters swore that wild antelope no longer bolted when they crossed Ojadili's fresh footprints. It was as if the earth itself respected him. Some claimed that the old leopard of the northern ridge had stopped stalking goats because it feared the scent of his spear. Pride warmed the hearts of elders who sat sipping palm wine and remembering other champions of old. Yet amid the harmony, one man walked alone. Ojadili stood at the edge of the square, half hidden behind a young iroko tree, watching the celebration meant for him. His broad shoulders rose and fell in a silent sigh. Cheers rang out when mothers spotted him, but he only offered a gentle nod before turning away. Many thought he was simply humble, but a heavier thought gnawed at his heart, a question with no easy answer: what next? Inside his hut that night, the hero stared at the low, crackling flame of a small lamp. Shadows danced up the mud walls. Around him lay trophies of victory, curved horns taken from a buffalo he felled as a boy, shields carved with symbols of 13 defeated villages, and strings of teeth from river crocodiles he had wrestled to protect fishermen. Each object whispered a past glory, but together they sounded like a single drumbeat of emptiness. Ojadili remembered every duel, every war. He had counted enemies like yam seeds at harvest, more than 1,000 by his reckoning, and none could match him. People called him Udumiri, the clay pot that never leaks, yet he felt hollow, as if a wind blew through an unseen crack. The more he won, the louder the hollowness echoed. One restless dawn he climbed the western hill and watched mist float over the 7 rivers. Each wide ribbon of water curved toward the evil forest, a place so thick with shadow it looked like night even at noon. Stories said monsters guarded the path, spirits weighed travelers' hearts, and beyond it lay the land of the unseen, where the gods walked like towering flames or whispered like dust. Ojadili's pulse quickened. Here, at last, was a fight great enough to fill the emptiness, to test his might against divine power. That very morning he visited his mother. Her compound smelled of groundnut soup and burning wood. She was pounding ogbono seeds for sauce, but when she saw the fierce resolve in her son's eyes, the wooden pestle slipped from her hands. Ojadili knelt and spoke softly. "Mother, you taught me to face fear. Now my spirit calls me beyond the 7 rivers to wrestle the gods." Her eyes widened like full moons. Tears welled. She put both palms on his cheeks. "My son, are village champions not enough? Must you fight those who shape thunder?" Ojadili lowered his gaze. "The strength in these arms will wither if I stay. My heart beats against my ribs like a trapped bird. If I do not go, it will break in silence." His mother's voice cracked. Many brave hunters walked into that forest, but none returned. Not even their bones came back for burial cloth. She sobbed until her wrapper soaked with tears, begging him to abandon the thought. She promised fresh yam barns in his honor, new songs, even a bride should he wish. But Ojadili's longing outweighed every offer. For 7 nights she fasted, placed clay lamps at crossroads, and prayed to friendly spirits for guidance. Each night Ojadili sat outside, staring at constellations that resembled chained wrestlers. He felt the stars themselves urging him onward. Neighbors noticed his silence. Young warriors asked him for training tips, hoping to capture a fraction of his skill, yet he barely heard them. Old men recalled the parable of Nwa, the tiny bird who, after too much feast, challenged its personal god to wrestle. They warned that pride walks a knife edge and even eagles can fall if they chase the sun. But their stories slid off his mind like rain on oiled cloth. What they called pride, he felt as purpose. One afternoon, Ojadili's mother took a calabash of water to the shrine of Ani, goddess of the earth, pleading for a sign. A snake crossed her path, striped in the colors of danger, then vanished into tall grass. She read this as a grave omen. Running home, she clutched her son's arm with trembling fingers. "The spirits show teeth," she whispered. "Stay, or you will tear my soul in two." Ojadili kissed her forehead. "Mother, a lion born in a cage still hears the call of the wild. If I stay, both of us will suffer, me in silence, you in watching." She knew then that words could no longer bind him. That night, as the village drums played soft for moon worship, she sat outside, rocking back and forth, braiding a small leather charm filled with herbs. At dawn, she handed it to him. "If your path darkens, remember me," she said, voice thin as a reed. He tied the charm around his neck, and though her tears fell anew, he felt strangely lighter. The children still chanted his name. The maidens still danced. Animals still paused in his footsteps. Yet every cheer sounded distant, like echoes from across a vast gorge. Ojadili's gaze fixed beyond the horizon, to rivers, forest, and sky, toward a battle no mortal had dared, but one his restless spirit could no longer resist. Word of Ojadili's decision spread faster than dry grass fire. At dawn he walked to the village square, barefooted, carrying only his staff. Chickens scattered as he took the raised platform where meetings were held. Around him gathered hunters with spears, potters with clay-stained arms, and old men leaning on crooked sticks. Women stayed at the edge, listening in worried silence. When Ojadili announced he would cross the 7 rivers and fight spirits, a murmur rose like angry bees. Chief Okafor, whose beard touched his chest, pounded the ground with a staff. "Madness!" he shouted. "You are like Nwa, the tiny bird that eats too much and bragged it could wrestle its own god." The bird fell on its back before the first blow. Another elder, thin as broom straw, wagged a finger. "Have you not earned enough praise? Must you pull the tail of lightning itself?" A third man recalled legends of brave hunters turned to stone in the evil forest. Mothers covered children's ears when he described hollow skulls that still screamed on windy nights. Yet Ojadili's face stayed calm. He bowed in respect but spoke with steady voice. "My heart is heavy until it knows its full strength. I will go with or without blessings." Sharp gasps followed his words. In their eyes he was no longer the humble hero but a torch near dry powder. Anger mixed with fear. Younger warriors muttered that letting him leave could bring disaster if spirits punished the whole clan for his pride. After long arguing, Chief Okafor raised his palm for silence. "The land has laws," he said more softly. "A grown man may chase any path. But elders must first seek the mind of the gods. You will visit Ojadili the soothsayer. If the spirits approve, we cannot chain you. If they refuse, you must remain." Ojadili agreed, knowing refusal would only delay him. Before sunrise next day, a small party set out. Chief Okafor, 2 other elders to witness, a drummer boy to signal their coming, and Ojadili himself. They carried kola nuts, white chalk, and a live cockerel, for no one met Ojadili empty-handed. The journey was steep. They crossed cornfields where dew sparkled, climbed rocky ridges smelling of wild thyme, and entered tall grass that hissed against ankles. All morning the drummer tapped a slow rhythm so the soothsayer would sense their approach. Birds flew up at the sound, startled. By noon they reached the lower slope of Okudo Mountain. Clouds draped its peak like gray cotton. Paths turned to twisted roots. Even Chief Okafor breathed hard. At a clearing they paused to sprinkle chalk and offer kola to earth spirits, asking safe passage. Halfway up, the air changed. Wind carried no bird calls, only the distant croak of hidden frogs. A faint humming seemed to rise from the stones themselves. The drummer stopped, suddenly uneasy. Chief Okafor signaled silence. The hum was Ojadili's unspoken welcome. They reached a ledge where a narrow cave opened like a dark mouth. From inside drifted the scent of crushed leaves and wet clay. At the entrance stood a young messenger, skin painted with spiral symbols. Without words he motioned for them to sit on flat rocks arranged in a crescent. The elders placed their offerings before him. He collected the cockerel, turned, and disappeared into the shadows. While they waited, Ojadili studied carvings on the cave wall, images of rain snakes, hawks, and a large eye watching everything below. He felt neither fear nor pride, only calm curiosity. The elders, however, avoided staring too long. Stories said the drawings moved when stared at. After what seemed an hour, a low thunder shook the ground though the sky was clear. Out walked Ojadili. He wore a cloak woven from grass blades fresh enough to glisten. His hair, white as river foam, hung past his shoulders. Around his neck rattled strings of dried locust wings that sang with every step. Legend said he drank no water. His lips looked cracked yet strong. Others swore he swallowed thunder when thirsty. Ojadili thought such tales were likely woven from awe. Still, the man's eyes held storms. They flashed bright, then soft, like lightning behind clouds. Ojadili's voice rolled like distant drums. "Who calls the spirits this day?" Chief Okafor knelt, touching forehead to earth. "Great seer, we seek the voice of our ancestors about this sun." He gestured toward Ojadili. "He longs to cross forbidden rivers and wrestle beings not of flesh." Ojadili studied the warrior in silence. Then he motioned to a circle of smooth stones. "Sit." Ojadili obeyed. The soothsayer produced a small horn, blew gently, and the humming rock vibration returned, deeper now. Leaves overhead rustled though no breeze touched them. From a pouch he scattered white seeds around Ojadili's feet. They landed in strange patterns. He closed his eyes, listening as if seeds whispered. Minutes passed. The elders dared not move. At last Ojadili opened his eyes. "The path calls him. He may travel," he said. Relief and dread mixed on Chief Okafor's face. But Ojadili raised a finger. "Know this, the man who leaves will not be the man who returns. Earth marks, water shifts, and fire remembers. Prepare your spirits." He reached for a twig dipped in red dye, drawing a short slash on Ojadili's right arm. "The mark of witness," he explained. "When your strength fails, look upon it and recall today." Ojadili bowed in gratitude. His chest felt lighter. Approval meant fewer chains of doubt. Yet the elders shivered. A blessing that warns of change can sound like a half-told curse. The party left as sunset painted the sky orange. No one spoke until they descended the mountain. Then Chief Okafor sighed. "You have permission, yes. But my heart trembles like a leaf." Ojadili touched the fresh mark on his arm and answered quietly, "The leaf trembles, yet it still grows toward the sun." Morning mist still hugged the foot of the mountain when Ojadili and 3 elders arrived. A slim young man stepped from behind a rock, body painted with white dots. He bowed and spoke softly. "Great Ojadili knows you come. Follow." The elders exchanged hopeful looks. The seer never sent a guide unless he was ready to speak. The path curved upward through tall ferns. Birds called once, then fell silent, as if the forest listened to every footstep. At a cave mouth they met Ojadili. He sat cross-legged on a flat stone, eyes closed, locust wing necklaces clicking in the breeze. Without opening his eyes he said, "Welcome, son of strong earth." Ojadili knelt. "I seek the road beyond rivers and shadows." The soothsayer lifted a carved stick, tapped it 3 times on the stone, and finally looked at his guests. "I have asked the spirits," he said. "You may travel, but when you return, your spirit will wear a new name." The elders felt both joy and fear. Joy, because their champion would not die. Fear, because no one knew what a new name meant. Would he come back gentle? Would he come back strange? They left with mixed hearts. Back in the village, Ojadili faced his next task, finding a companion. The journey ahead would cross swamps and caves where one man alone might fall ill or be trapped. He went first to Obi, a fearless hunter. Obi shook his head. "My wife expects a child. I dare not gamble with spirits now." He asked Chisholm, a swift runner. "Friend," Chisholm replied, "I would join you to the borders of our land, but my legs tremble when I hear stories of ghosts." He even asked Ojadili, half in jest. The old seer laughed so hard his necklaces rattled. "I still owe the world many visions," he said, wiping a tear. "But my prayers will walk beside you." Word of Ojadili's search spread through the market like spilled palm oil. Most villagers sighed with relief that their names were not on his list. Only one man stepped forward, Iloka. Iloka emerged late in the afternoon, smelling faintly of palm wine. His eyes shone with excitement or drink, perhaps both. "I will go," he announced, puffing out his thin chest. The elders raised eyebrows. Women whispered, "Iloka the flute player? The one who naps under the ojine tree." Children giggled behind baskets of peppers. Ojadili frowned. He knew Iloka well, gentle heart, but soft hands, no taste for hardship. Still, every bag needs a carrier, and every torch needs a keeper of oil. After a long breath, he nodded. "Pack light," he said. "We leave in 2 dawns." Preparations filled the next 48 hours. Ojadili sharpened his short spear, folded spare wrappers, and placed a small wooden carving of his household god into a goatskin pouch. He counted gourds for water, flints for fire, and wrapped dried meat in banana leaves. Meanwhile, Iloka wandered from hut to hut borrowing items, a clay lamp from his aunt, a rope from his cousin, and 3 empty calabashes, just in case. On the last night before departure, the entire village gathered. A wide fire crackled in the center. The chief elder poured libation onto the earth, asking Ani, the groundmother, to open safe roads. Ojadili knelt. The elder tied a white thread around his wrist, a symbol of protection. Then Iloka shuffled forward. Some people chuckled, but silence returned when he lifted his polished flute. He played a slow, sweet tune that drifted above the flames. Even the night insects paused. When the song ended, the elder placed a similar white thread on Iloka's wrist. "Even a small drum can wake sleeping spirits," he said. "Play with courage." Dawn came purple and gold. Ojadili adjusted the heavy water bag across his back. Iloka took the oil lantern and slung the goatskin pouch over his shoulder. Chickens clucked as the 2 men walked toward the first river, their shadows long on the red earth. At the village edge, Ojadili's mother stood barefoot, holding the leather charm she had made. She pressed it to her lips, then slipped it into her son's hand. No words, only a look that said, "Return." Iloka raised his flute and played a lively farewell. The tune jumped like morning birds and chased sorrow into hiding, at least for a moment. Together, warrior and wanderer stepped onto the narrow path that would lead them to 7 rivers, an evil forest, and the world no mortal fully understood. Behind them, the village watched until the dust of their footsteps settled and only distant birdsong remained. Red torches flared around the wide stone arena, painting every surface with shifting shadows. The air smelled of sulfur and wet clay. At the very center stood Ojadili, bare-chested, skin streaked with dust and sweat, facing a creature taller than any palm tree he had ever seen. The monster's limbs were like knotted tree roots, its eyes 2 pits of green fire. Shouts from 1,000 unseen throats rolled down from dark terraces, a chorus of spirits hungry for a hero's fall. High above, ragged banners swung in an endless night wind. Ojadili tightened the strip of cloth around his waist, breathing slowly to calm his pounding heart. He had wrestled men, lions, and even the cruel pull of river currents, but this being was something entirely new, a living nightmare forged from the bones of forgotten gods. The creature's name was whispered only once by a drum-voiced herald, the Oracle. After that, the crowd repeated it again and again, their echo bouncing off cold walls like mocking laughter. Behind the barrier of curved tusks that marked the fighter's ring, Iloka clutched his polished flute. In normal life he played lively tunes at moon dances, but tonight his fingers shook. He remembered Ejidijai's parting words, "When your friend's strength fades, trust the breath inside your flute." The gods once hid fire there. Iloka had laughed then, thinking the old man fanciful. Now, staring at Ojadili and the looming oracle, he prayed the story was true. A jagged horn sounded, and the match began. The oracle lunged. Its arms swung like battering rams. Ojadili ducked left, rolled, and came up fast, driving his shoulder into the creature's ribs. He might as well have hit a hill. A booming snarl shook the floor. One massive hand lashed out, catching Ojadili across the chest and sending him spinning through the dust. Pain flared. He rose, dizzy, but the oracle was already on him. A second blow dropped him to both knees. Gasps rippled through the demonic spectators. Some clapped, others banged metal plates. Ojadili's breathing turned ragged. Blood trickled from his lip. Memories flashed, his mother tying a charm to his wrist, children chanting his name by firelight, Iloka promising to carry the water bag. He could not fail here, yet his muscles trembled like hummingbird wings. On the sidelines, Iloka's heart raced. He lifted the flute, sucked in a breath, and played the only melody his shaking hands could recall, a tune once taught by an old uncle for calming restless goats. 3 clear notes drifted into the air, then a 4th that quivered like candlelight. The sound cut through roaring voices and sliced straight to Ojadili's ears. Something stirred inside the warrior. Warmth flooded his limbs. He tasted iron and wood smoke, felt drumbeats in his bones. The arena's torchlight brightened. He sprang up, surprising the oracle with a rapid twist and sweep that cracked against its shin. The monster lurched backward. Cheers, some angry, some amazed, rose all around. Realizing the music held power, Iloka steadied his breath and began a steadier rhythm. Each phrase seemed to weave a glowing thread between player and fighter. To Ojadili, the melody became a map. Climb this note, duck under that chord, strike on the rising beat. He moved with new precision, sidestepping heavy fists, jabbing elbows into soft joints, rolling away before claws could close. But the oracle was immortal rage given form. Wounds that would fell any beast sealed before his eyes. After every clever strike, the creature hissed and struck back twice as hard. One hammer fist caught Ojadili's shoulder, driving him flat. For a heartbeat he could not breathe. Sand filled his mouth. He thought he tasted his own defeat. Iloka felt the tune falter. His lungs burned, yet he pushed harder, sliding into an older melody passed down through his clan. This one was slower, haunting, built of long rising notes that climbed toward a single high cry. As it spilled into the air, even the demons paused, their jeers forgotten. Some cocked heads, confused by the sudden ache the song planted in their chests, an ache they had not felt since they were stardust children of a kinder sky. The music wrapped Ojadili in shimmering memory. He saw the first river he ever crossed, felt cool water against bare ankles, heard laughter of friends long buried. Strength welled again. With a roar he leapt, locked arms around the oracle's left leg, and wrenched. The creature bellowed, toppling sideways. Dust mushroomed into the torchlight. Ojadili surged on top, driving fist after fist against a pulsing node of green light at its chest. Cracks spread like ice on a pond. The crowd screamed, some thrilled, others furious. Yet victory still lay distant. With last reserve of power, the oracle surged upward, flinging Ojadili off as easily as a dog shakes water. Before the hero could plant his feet, the monster's hand clamped around his neck, hoisting him high. Ojadili's toes dangled a man's height above the blood-stained sand. Fingers like iron tightened, cutting all breath. His vision dimmed to a tunnel of flickering torches. No! Iloka's cry broke into the flute's melody, but he did not stop playing. Instead he poured every drop of fear, hope, and friendship into the notes. The sound grew brighter, louder, swelling until it felt like the whole arena vibrated. Sparks of golden light gathered around the flute, swirling out in a spiral that danced toward the suspended warrior. Ojadili, eyes fogged, sensed the light wrap his chest. Air rushed back into his lungs. Memories of every cheer, every prayer from home pulsed through him like drum beats. With one desperate motion he clamped both hands on the oracle's wrist, twisting against impossible force. The world narrowed to flute song, torch sheet, and the need to live. The chapter ends here, frozen in that breathless instant, Ojadili hanging between sky and sand, Iloka's enchanted notes soaring into the night, and the crowd holding its clamor for the next heartbeat, waiting to see whether music or darkness will claim the final word. The oracle's fist still gripped Ojadili's neck when the cheering reached a fever pitch. The creature raised its head, soaking in the cruel applause of demons perched high in broken terraces. It wanted the moment to last, wanted every eye to see its strength and every mouth to praise its coming feast. Lamps of green fire flickered across its stony skin as it turned slowly from side to side, acknowledging the roar like a proud champion in a king's court. Down at the ringside, Iloka's heart hammered. His flute lay silent by his knee, its magic notes had spent their power. He knew a final blow would come any heartbeat. Ojadili's face was turning gray, eyes half closed, arms slack. Desperation screamed inside Iloka's chest. He yanked open the goatskin bag he had carried since the first river. Out spilled a coil of rope, a small gourd of oil, and the smooth wooden figure of Ojadili's household god. Beneath these lay a short dagger wrapped in red cloth. Ejidijai had pressed it into Ojadili's hand before they left, calling it a sun-tooth, a blade said to cut even stone if aimed with faith. Fingers trembling, Iloka tore away the cloth and leaped to the barrier of curved tusks. "Brother!" he shouted, but the thunder of the crowd drowned his voice. He stretched his arm between the tusks, knife pointed hilt first. Ojadili's blurred gaze caught a glint of metal. Hope flashed like lightning behind storm clouds. With a burst of will, he kicked the oracle's thigh. The monster grunted and loosened its grip just enough. Ojadili's hand shot out, his fingertips brushed the dagger, then closed tight. The oracle, still basking in applause, did not notice. It turned one last time toward its admirers, nodding as if to say, "Watch what happens next." That small arrogance opened a crack in fate. Ojadili pressed the blade to his chest, feeling the heartbeat of the weapon, then reversed his grip. Summoning everything left inside him, every cheer from children, every tear from his mother, he plunged the dagger into the glowing node at the oracle's heart. The blade slid in as if striking ripened fruit. A sound like splitting granite ripped through the arena. Green light burst from the wound, painting the sand with eerie color. The oracle's head snapped down in shock, its eyes widened, flames flickering wildly. It staggered backward, choking on a roar that mixed rage with disbelief. Its claws scratched at its chest, trying to rip out the foreign pain, but its strength was already pouring onto the ground in streams of emerald fire. Demons fell silent. Some shrank into shadows, others hissed, confused and afraid. They had come for blood sport, not to witness the fall of one they worshipped. The oracle swayed. Huge knees buckled. With a final howl that shook dust from the rafters, it crashed face first into the sand. Echoes rolled like distant thunder, then faded to an impossible hush. The immortal lay still, no rise of breath, no flicker of green flame, only a long, jagged crack running from collarbone to navel where the dagger sat buried to its hilt. Ojadili stumbled, half-dazed, lungs burning with new air. He looked at his empty, shaking hands, then at the lifeless giant before him. A thought tried to form, "I did it." but the words felt too heavy to fit inside his skull. Iloka vaulted the barrier, sand spattering under his bare feet. He threw both arms around Ojadili's shoulders, laughing and weeping at once. You killed it," he cried, voice breaking. "You killed an immortal." Ojadili blinked, as if waking from a dream. Slowly his lips curled into a weary smile. He returned the embrace, feeling Iloka's thin frame trembling against his own. Around them, the hush of the arena stretched, an ocean of stunned silence broken only by their ragged breathing. Somewhere above, a single demon shrieked in anger. Another answered in confusion, then another. Soon 100 voices clashed, some wailing, some growling, none agreeing what should happen next. In that churning noise, Ojadili realized the truth. They had shattered not just a body but a belief. Hand on Iloka's shoulder, he whispered, "We must leave before they decide what vengeance looks like." But for one heartbeat longer they let victory settle into their bones. Two friends, one fearless, one once called coward, stood side by side beside the fallen god, feeling the weight of legend soak into the sand beneath their feet. Old songs say the spirit world never sleeps, yet after the oracle's death a strange quiet settled over its broken arena. Torches dimmed. Drums stopped. Every ridge and balcony lay under a hush so thick it felt like fog. Ojadili and Iloka could hear their own heartbeats echoing against distant stone. Suddenly, a thunder of wings announced the arrival of Akpagari, chief of demons. He landed near the fallen oracle, claws scraping sparks off the floor. His eyes, red as fresh charcoal, burned with sorrow and rage. Around his neck hung the iron circlet he had promised to place on Ojadili's brow as a prize of immortality. Akpagari raised the circlet, then crushed it in one fist. "You have broken the balance," he roared. "No mortal shall rise among us today." Shards clattered onto the sand like angry rain. Behind him, lesser spirits growled approval, their mouths stretching into hungry grins. Iloka reached for his flute but found only air. It had fallen during the last struggle. Ojadili stepped in front of his friend, lifting sand in his sweaty fist, useless against claws and fangs, but it was all he had. Akpagari pointed. "Seize them. Chain them in the pit of forgetting." At his command, horned guards rushed forward. Ojadili grabbed Iloka's wrist. "Run now." They sprinted toward a side tunnel, feet slipping on dust-streaked stone. Demons surged behind, snarling like wolves denied meat. The passage twisted left, then split into 3 mouths. Ojadili chose the narrowest path, his warrior's mind betting a large foe would slow in tight spaces. They plunged into darkness, guided only by faint breaths of cooler air that smelled of earth rather than brimstone, a hint that an exit lay ahead. Bat-like spirits swooped from the ceiling. Iloka swung the goatskin bag like a club, scattering them with surprised squeaks. One claw caught Ojadili's arm, leaving a stinging welt, but he kept on. The tunnel opened onto a cliff ledge lit by gray moonlight. Far below stretched the boundary river, a thin silver line marking where spirit land ended and mortal soil began. Ojadili saw no bridge, only jagged rocks and rushing water. Demons crowded the tunnel mouth behind them, eyes glowing. "There." Iloka pointed at a fallen column that lay across the gap like a crooked plank. Wind howled through cracks, threatening to shove them into the churning dark. It was the only way. Iloka scrambled first. The column wobbled under his light weight but held. He leapt to the opposite bank, nearly sliding on loose gravel. "Hurry!" Ojadili started across. Halfway, Akpagari burst onto the ledge. With a roar he flung a barbed chain. Its hook caught Ojadili's shoulder, driving him to a knee. Pain burned hot, yet the hero dragged himself forward. The chief demon yanked again, trying to reel him back like a hooked fish. Ojadili braced, then in one powerful motion ripped the hook free, skin tearing, blood spraying the night air. Akpagari lunged. His claw shot out, aiming at Ojadili's heart. Instead it scraped from shoulder to hip, missing vital life but carving a deep, curved groove along the spine. The demon slipped on dust, bellowing frustration. Ojadili forced himself upright, dashed the final steps, and dived over the edge. He rolled onto mortal soil, gasping. Iloka grabbed his arm and pulled him farther from the brink just as the column cracked and tumbled, cutting off pursuit. The chief demon stood across the river, wings trembling with fury, but he could not cross. Law of realms forbade it. His roar faded as a veil of dawn mist rose between worlds. Ojadili touched the fresh wound tracing his back. Blood already clotted, but the mark felt deep, more scar than cut. Iloka stared in awe. "Brother, spirits tried to claim you. Now all humans will bear that memory." And so legends later taught that the line down every person's spine was born from that swipe, proof of a battle between flesh and spirit. Days later, the two travelers limped into their village. Word flew ahead like harmattan dust. Drums rolled, horns blared, and elders poured palm wine on the earth to thank the gods. Children ran circles around Ojadili, shouting, "He beat the spirits!" Women ululated. Men hoisted Iloka onto their shoulders, finally recognizing the flute player as a hero. That night fires blazed brighter than any feast remembered. Yam pounded, meat roasted, and stories flowed thicker than palm wine. Yet amid the songs, Ojadili sat quietly, feeling the ridge on his back, a reminder of the price paid for victory and freedom. Iloka placed the rescued flute in his friend's hand. "When you hear this again, think of the bridge, the claw, and the dawn," he said. Ojadili smiled and nodded. He understood. Some songs are written in scars, and some triumphs echo long after the drums fall silent. The fall of Ojadili by his own people is the next part. Comment where you are watching from if you watch it to the end. Thank you.